Picture this. The year is 1882. A man in the full dress uniform of the British Indian Civil Service walks into his superior's office, places his credentials on the desk, and resigns. But that is not what shocks colonial India. What shocks colonial India is what he does next. He walks out into the blazing Bombay street. He strips off his Western clothes. He shaves his head to the bone. He pulls on the saffron robe of a Hindu holy man, removes his shoes, and places his bare feet on the burning road. And this man, this son of empire, educated at one of England's finest colleges, groomed for imperial command, fluent in Sanskrit and Urdu, in line for a guaranteed government pension, walks barefoot into the slums of Bombay to preach Jesus Christ to the untouchables. Colonial officers laugh at him. Crowds spit on him. The governor of Bombay personally orders his arrest. He goes back to the streets. Have you ever felt the call of God pulling you so violently beyond your comfort zone that everyone who loved you thought you had completely lost your mind? Have you ever stood at the edge of a decision that would cost you absolutely everything? Career, family approval, financial security, social standing, and asked yourself whether God was truly worth that price? What few people know is that this man would be arrested on 2 continents, bury 2 wives in the harvest field, and still say yes to God a 3rd time. He would walk unarmed into territories where British Army regiments feared to enter. He would reportedly become the only Christian missionary ever invited to preach inside the sacred Sikh Golden Temple at Amritsar. He would take men the British Empire had legally branded hereditary criminals, fenced in like livestock, declared subhuman by law, and transform them into silk weavers whose cloth would one day drape the shoulders of the Duke of Windsor himself. His name is Frederick Booth-Tucker, and the story you are about to hear will not just inspire you, it will interrupt your excuses. Comment below with "My feet are my sermon" if you are ready to let your life preach what your words never could. To go lower, walk further, and pay the daily, unglamorous price of incarnational obedience. Stay to the end, where we reveal the hidden discipline that kept Frederick burning across 4 decades of loss, enabling you to run with endurance the race God has set before you. Frederick St. George de Lautour Tucker was born on March 21, 1853, in Munger, India. His father was a deputy commissioner in the British Indian Civil Service, a man of empire, a man of power. They sent Frederick to Cheltenham College in England, polished him into a gentleman of the imperial class, and returned him to India as a crowned instrument of British rule. The world had already written his story before he was old enough to choose, but God had been writing a different one from the beginning. Growing up in India, young Frederick saw the faces that empire trained its officers to look past. He walked streets his class was supposed to ride above. He learned languages his caste was supposed to dismiss. Those early years planted something in him that no British education could uproot. He saw India's people, truly saw them, before he was taught that men of his station were not supposed to. His biographer would later call him William Booth's first gentleman, the colonial gentleman who became a servant. But that title was earned through a descent no one who knew him in those early years could have predicted. In 1875, now rising through the ranks of the Indian Civil Service and posted in Amritsar, Frederick took leave in London. In a city that should have confirmed everything the empire had prepared him to become, Dwight L. Moody and Ira Sankey held their great evangelistic campaigns. Tucker walked in, and the God who had been whispering to him through Indian streets and funeral processions finally spoke with a voice he could not unhear. This was not a polite conversion. It was a collision. Back in India, the fire refused to go out. Tucker lay awake at night in his colonial bungalow, watching funeral processions wind through the dark streets below, listening to the wailing of mourners, asking himself one question that was ruining his sleep and, slowly, ruining his career. Who will tell them? He was carrying the answer in his chest. He just had not yet been willing to pay the price for it. Then one day he read a copy of the War Cry, the Salvation Army's publication, and something inside him detonated. Christ did not come to rule from a distance. He came down. He became one of us. The empire Tucker served was built on power imposed from above. The kingdom he was being called into was built on love poured out from below. The two were not compatible. Tucker knew it. And now there was no way to unknow it. What followed were long, grinding nights of prayer. Not surface prayer, not religious maintenance. Costly, sustained, wrestling prayer. The kind where a man stays in the presence of God until his calling becomes more real than his comfort, until the pension and the prestige and the carefully prepared future all lose their grip. This was the first discipline that would define everything Tucker ever did. The willingness to remain in the prayer room until God became larger than the empire. In 1881, Tucker resigned from the Indian Civil Service, against his family's explicit wishes, against every expectation his social class had placed on him. He forfeited his pension. He surrendered his standing. He traded his officer's uniform for a simple dhoti. But here is what most people rarely appreciate. He did not just resign from a job. He resigned from an identity. His wife Louisa was opposed. Both his parents were opposed. His colleagues thought he had destroyed everything they had worked to build. He left behind a guaranteed pension, imperial prestige, and the approval of everyone who had ever believed in him. He walked away from all of it with only one voice in his corner. And that voice was not human. This is the cost that rarely gets recorded. Not the saffron robe or the bare feet. The quieter sacrifice, at the breakfast table, in the faces of the people he loved. The moment a man says yes to God and watches the room go silent. This moment matters more than people realize. When God calls you somewhere, it is not guaranteed that those closest to you will understand, celebrate, or even remain with you through it. Sometimes the first price of obedience is paid not on a foreign field, but at your own dinner table. Tucker paid that price first, and the story of Fakir Singh was about to begin. On September 19, 1882, Tucker arrived in Bombay. Sickness had reduced his pioneering team to just 4 people, Captain Henry Bullard, Lieutenants Arthur Norman, and Mary Thompson at his side. The colonial establishment was already watching with suspicion and contempt. Newspapers tracked their every move. The governor of Bombay, Sir James Ferguson, was personally and fanatically opposed to everything Tucker intended to do. Immediately, Keshub Chandra Sen, leader of the Hindu Brahmo Samaj, sent fraternal support and stood ready to protest their unjust treatment. Tucker had made defenders before he preached a single word. The early meetings drew crowds, but the crowds were filled mostly with people who were already Christian. The 60 million outcasts, the Dalits, the untouchables, the people society had declared beyond reach, were nowhere in sight. Tucker tried first to reach India's higher castes. It failed, completely. The proud did not respond to the servant, and rather than doubling down on a failing strategy to protect his reputation, Tucker did what most leaders never do. He went lower. He abandoned the entire approach and pivoted deliberately to the people the world had written off. He did not dress up the failure. He did not explain it away. He simply descended further into surrender. He came to reach India. India taught him where to go. What followed was the most radical act of cultural surrender the modern mission world had ever seen. Tucker shed his Western identity like a skin he no longer needed. He took the Indian name Fakir Singh. Fakir meaning holy man of poverty. Singh meaning lion. He became the lion of God who roared not through power but through surrender. Saffron robes, shaved head, bare feet on burning roads, eating from his hands, sleeping on the floor, traveling third class, bathing at village wells, begging for food at doorways, cleaning his teeth with tree sticks, renouncing blankets for sacks. Every comfort was systematically, deliberately stripped. And it was not only Tucker. His entire team underwent the same transformation. William Stevens became Yesu Ratnam, Jewel of Jesus. Clara Case became Nurani, shining light. A whole company choosing to die together. The incarnation was their method. Christ became one of us. They would become one of them. General Booth told us to get into their skins, and we shall. The shock to India was not Tucker's words. It was his skin. They had never, not once in all the long centuries of British rule, seen a white man live like this, eat like this, suffer like this. The miracle of his presence began cracking open caste barriers that centuries of religion and empire had sealed permanently shut. Baptisms happened in the dust. Joy erupted in streets where joy had no history. New life broke out among people who had been told they had none. Then came the night that would define his entire ministry. Tucker and his co-laborer Arnolis Weerasurya, a Sri Lankan Buddhist who had once deliberately set fire to a Bible and was now Tucker's most trusted partner in the gospel, were traveling through Gujarat on mission. Night fell. They made camp beneath a tamarind tree outside the small village of Atmapur. Tucker lay down and slept. While he slept, the villagers crept out to investigate these strange visitors. They leaned over Tucker's sleeping form, and they saw his feet, blistered, raw, ulcerated, split and cracked from months of walking barefoot across India's burning roads. "Why does this man's feet look like that?" they asked Weerasurya. Weerasurya explained. The villagers went quiet, and then, one by one, the words came, "If this man can do this for us, we must follow that way." Tucker woke to find a village opening to the gospel of Jesus Christ, not because of a sermon, not because of an argument, an invitation, or a strategy, because of his feet. I never preached a better sermon than with my feet that day. 121 years later, in 2003, Tucker's successor gathered 15,000 Salvationists at that exact site in Gujarat. In an unrehearsed moment of worship, he knelt under that same tamarind tree and washed a colleague's feet. The sermon Tucker preached with his body in 1882 was still being preached in 2003. That is what one act of daily, unglamorous, costly faithfulness can do across the centuries. It does not stop preaching when you die. It keeps preaching long after your grave has been filled and the flowers have faded. But the empire was not finished with Tucker. At Bombay's Obelisk Road, Tucker's marching party was halted by a solid wall of mounted police stretching from pavement to pavement. The deputy commissioner rode forward and declared, "In the name of Her Majesty, Queen of England and Queen Empress of India, I order you to disperse." Tucker stepped forward. He raised his hand for silence, and in a voice that did not waver, he replied, "In the name of His Majesty, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, I command you to stand aside." 2 kingdoms, 1 street, one man choosing which king he would obey. What followed was a sustained 5-month war of legal attrition, multiple arrests, multiple trials, 1-month prison sentences, fines, and the seizure of goods. Every single time Tucker was offered freedom in exchange for silence, he chose the cell. And in those cells, rather than breaking, Tucker led worship. Fellow prisoners converted. Guards were undone by what they witnessed. The prison became a mission field, exactly as it had been for Paul and Silas centuries before. Tucker's unrivaled knowledge of Indian law became his weapon in the courtroom. The battle raged until the Indio office in London was finally forced to intervene and order the persecution stopped. And then something happened that had never occurred in the history of Christian mission. The Sikhs, guardians of one of the most sacred spaces on the surface of the earth, reportedly invited Frederick Tucker to preach inside the Golden Temple at Amritsar. An honor almost never extended to a Christian missionary. What pride could never obtain, surrender was given freely. And when 3,000 prominent Indians, none of them Salvationists, none of them Christians, gathered in Calcutta's town hall to formally petition the Viceroy in Tucker's defense, the message was impossible to miss. The servant had become a symbol of Indian dignity against its own colonial masters. The oppressed were defending the one who had come to serve them. The kingdom of God was overturning every earthly power structure. In a city meeting room in Calcutta on a Wednesday afternoon. In 1877, Tucker had married his first wife, Louisa Mary. She came to India with him. She gave herself to the mission beside him, and in February 1887, in Bombay, in the very harvest field she had consecrated her life to, Louisa died of cholera. Tucker did not retreat. The grave was filled and he got up and returned to the work. This was the first payment. It would not be the last. In 1888, Tucker married Emma Moss Booth, the daughter of General William Booth himself. Emma was no quiet companion. She was a preacher, a leader, a woman of immense apostolic force. They would have 9 children together. 3 died in infancy. Grief was not a season in Tucker's life. It was the permanent texture of his days. 9 children, 3 graves. And still he rose each morning and placed everything he had left back in God's hands. Their partnership was apostolic. When Emma's health broke in 1891 and they were recalled to London, Tucker became the first editor of the Officer magazine, shaping the theological formation of an entire generation of Salvation Army officers. His pen was as surrendered as his feet had ever been. In 1896, they were sent to lead the Salvation Army across the United States, arriving into a movement fractured by internal schism and desperate for renewal. Tucker arrived and built farm colonies, pulling the homeless, the addicted, and the broken from city streets, and resettling them into productive agricultural communities. Every expert said it would fail. It worked. Families were restored. Addicts found sobriety. Tucker testified before the United States Congress, the barefoot man from Indian bazaars now standing before the most powerful legislative body on earth. Obedience has an address, and it will carry you further than your ambition ever imagined. In American cities, his open-air campaigns drew the wrath of local authorities. He was hauled before a court and formally convicted of maintaining a public nuisance. The sentence was suspended. Tucker walked out of that courthouse and directly back to the street. He had already been imprisoned in colonial India for preaching to untouchables. He was now convicted in the land of freedom for preaching to the forgotten. The kingdom of God is a nuisance to every earthly order, on every continent, in every century. Tucker considered it a promotion. Then came Chicago. Tucker was preaching at the Salvation Army Citadel. His text was from Hebrews. Christ sympathizing with our weaknesses, tempted in every way as we are, yet without sin. He preached on a God who did not observe human suffering from a comfortable distance, but descended into it willingly, fully, at enormous personal cost. After the service, a man approached him. His face carried the weight of a grief that does not apologize. "That works when you preach it," the man said. "But how about you go through what I went through? I lost my wife. She was killed. And you have children asking, 'Where is mommy?' Try that. I bet you couldn't preach that text if you actually went through it." Tucker listened. He did not dismiss the man. He did not offer a quick theological response. The challenge landed in full. He did not know, as that man walked away into the night, that God had just handed him his final examination. 1 week later, Emma Booth-Tucker was traveling by train in Missouri on active Salvation Army mission. The train derailed. Emma was killed. The woman who had given him 9 children, who had buried 3 of them beside him, who had stood with him in India, in London, in American courtrooms and congressional halls. Gone, in a moment, on a train, in Missouri. Tucker received the news. Thousands came to mourn at Emma's funeral. Crowds who had known her ministry, standing witness to the price the call had extracted. Tucker stood among them, broken but not destroyed. And then he stood up to preach. He wept openly before the crowd. He did not hide his grief, and he did not apologize for it. And then through his tears he said these words, "This was said to me last time I preached, and I am going through exactly what that gentleman described. But I am here to say, yes, Yes, you can go through it. Yes, I can. His grace is sufficient. You may be in the deepest valley, but there will be light at the end of the tunnel. The crowd was wrecked. The very text that the grieving man had challenged was now proven. Not in argument, not in theology. In the body of the preacher standing before them, broken and upright at the same time, tears on his face, grace in his voice, still declaring the sufficiency of God. This was the grain of wheat doctrine made flesh, a man who understood that death does not end the harvest, it starts it. Now, let that land for a moment. Tucker had buried Louisa to cholera. Now he had buried Emma to a train wreck. He had raised children who asked where their mother was. He had paid every price the call placed on the table. And he stood before that crowd not to perform courage, but because he had found, in the grinding labor of private prayer over decades, that God was actually sufficient, not theoretically sufficient. Sufficient, in fact, in flesh, in tears, in the worst week of his life. In 1906, Frederick Tucker married again. He married Colonel Minnie Reed, daughter of a one-time acting governor of Bombay, a woman of equal calling and equal field experience. And together they returned to India. Understand what this means. He had buried 2 wives. He had raised children in mission fields while grieving. He had paid the price twice. And rather than retreating into safety, rather than negotiating with God for a season of protection, he said yes a third time, to love, to partnership, to the field, to all the vulnerability those things carry. Some men are broken by the cost of the call. Tucker paid it twice, and then offered himself a third time. This was not stubbornness. This was not recklessness. This was the fruit of decades of private surrender in the prayer room. A man who had so thoroughly settled the question of ownership that there was no version of his future he was still holding back. Every time God asked for more, Tucker's hands were already open, not because he felt no pain, because the God he had met in prayer was larger than the pain. As Special Commissioner for India and Ceylon from 1907, Tucker returned to the criminal tribes. The British government had legally classified entire communities as hereditary criminals, born into crime, fenced in under police supervision, declared subhuman by the state. He walked unarmed into territories where British Army regiments refused to go, and remained untouched. His fakir status a supernatural shield that no military escort could replicate. Before he entered, Tucker spent nights on his face before God, praying for the worst of society, because the prayer room was always the first battlefield. When Tucker arrived at the Dam settlement in Gorakhpur, 300 men swarmed the walls, screaming, stamping, shaking their fists, a theatrical display of intimidation designed to break him before he could speak. Tucker stood in the screaming. He did not move. He did not leave. When he patiently explained that the settlement would provide meaningful work at 4 annas a day, the spokesman screamed directly at him. 4 annas, when we can go out any night and get 1,000 rupees without working? What do you take us for? The red-turbaned Indian police stood watching with undisguised skepticism. Even they did not believe this could work. Tucker stood in the contempt. He stood in the impossibility. He stood in the screaming faces of men who had nothing but fury to offer him. And he did not move. The call does not always begin with open doors. Sometimes it begins with people screaming in your face, and the man who has already become nothing simply waits. He stayed. He built. Settlements grew. Farms, wells, hostels, medical centers, schools, famine relief operations. Tucker pioneered 22 village banks across India, lending money at low interest so the poor could buy their own land, anticipating microfinance by a full century. He imported 3 million silkworm eggs from France, summoned Kashmir's finest silk experts to the arid Punjab, and built a silk weaving industry at Changamanga that permanently altered the economic destiny of thousands of people. Men who were born labeled criminals, men the empire had written off, fenced in, and declared irredeemable. Those very men produced silk of such exceptional quality. It won gold medals across the empire and was celebrated by royalty itself. What empire marked as worthless, the kingdom of God made precious. And when the settlement granaries ran empty, no government aid, no guaranteed funding. Supplies arrived at exactly the critical hour, every time. And then there was the gang leader, catalogued by the army as irredeemable, who dropped his weapon and knelt for prayer the moment Tucker approached him unarmed. What the empire could not conquer with armies, one surrendered man conquered with love. In 1913, the Viceroy of India personally awarded Tucker the Kaiser-i-Hind Medal, first class, the empire formally honoring the man who had once resigned from the empire to serve its most forgotten people. In 1920, he received the Order of the Founder, the Salvation Army's highest honor. He served as traveling commissioner until his retirement in 1924. He died on July 17, 1929. He was buried at Abney Park Cemetery in London, the same ground where Catherine Booth, whose biography he had written with his own hand, lay at rest. They called him the first gentleman of the Salvation Army. He chose to become the last, the servant of all. You stayed to the end. And as promised, here is what kept Frederick Booth-Tucker burning. It was not the saffron robe. It was not the courtroom courage. It was not even the grief he survived. The hidden discipline beneath everything Frederick Booth-Tucker ever did was this. He practiced total surrender in private, every single day, for decades. Not the dramatic surrender of a resignation letter or a prison cell. The daily, unglamorous, invisible surrender of a man who returned to prayer each morning and placed everything he was, everything he had, and everything he might yet lose on the table before God, before the day had a chance to take any of it from him first. He did not pray until his circumstances improved. He prayed until God became larger than his circumstances. That was the engine beneath every act of impossible obedience, invisible, practiced in obscurity, requiring nothing but an open hand and a daily willingness to return. And it is available to you, right now, today. The world tried to stop Frederick Booth-Tucker with mockery, colonial authority, courts, legal conviction, prison cells, and 2 graves. None of it worked, because a man who has already given everything cannot be threatened with losing something. If this video has been a blessing to you, then consider joining our Cloud of Witnesses membership for exclusive content, early access, and a community of people who are committed to running with endurance the race God has set before them. Hit the join button on the channel homepage or click on the membership link in the description below. Frederick Booth-Tucker was born the first gentleman of the British Empire. He died the servant of the forgotten. He paid the price of the call 3 times over, and every time God asked, his hands were already open. 2 continents tried to silence him. 2 graves tried to break him. Nothing worked, because a man who has become nothing has nothing left to lose. Comment with, "My feet are my sermon." If you are ready to strip off every credential, walk barefoot into the impossible, and pay whatever price the call demands. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, like and subscribe to Cloud of Witnesses for more life-changing stories of faith that will equip you to boldly fulfill the call of God in your life. This week, spend 15 minutes every morning in open-handed prayer before anything else. Place every role, every ambition, and every comfort before God. Ask one question: what do you want from me today? Practice this for 7 days and watch what begins to shift in your spirit. If Tucker's surrender has stirred you, wait until you hear Charles Cowman. What happens when a man leaves a career to plant churches across a nation, then watches his body fail while the call still burns? What devotional practice did Cowman forge in obscurity that became one of the most beloved Christian books ever written? Check out this next video to discover Cowman's story, the principle of strength through suffering, and the transformation waiting for those who remain.